Alrighty. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. I know Dawn's been anxiously waiting over there, so I thank you, Dawn. I appreciate the patience.
Sure.
My name is Matthew Gage, and I'm a partner experience manager here at GreenPath Financial Wellness. And I have with me one of our financial wellness experts, Dawn Jardine. Dawn, would you like to take a moment and introduce yourself real quick?
Sure, I would love to. So, my name is Dawn Jardine. I have been here at GreenPath for a little over 15 years, and that whole time I've spent in the expert role. So, I talk to people all day long, and I enjoy it. I love it.
Yeah, and the reason Dawn for this presentation specifically, she talks to people all day long about their credit, about their budgets, about all kinds of stuff. Like, if you had to guess, just take a rough off the top of your head, how many credit reports have you been into? How many credit reports have you seen, reviewed?
So every week I would say at least 25 to 30 credit reports per
Yeah.
week. So I don't even want to do the math. It's a
Uh,
lot over
don't-
15 and a half years,
yes.
almost
Yeah.
15 and a half. Yeah.
It's a lot. So, yeah, and that's why I think having you here today to talk to us about credit reports and scores is great. And so, thank you for joining us today, Dawn.
Yeah.
My experience, I spent a couple of years as a financial wellness expert, and prior to working at GreenPath, I actually worked for a credit union, and I worked and did some lending and some other things. So, I have a lot of experience in the credit reports as well. So, between the two of us, I think we can tackle a lot of the questions that you might have today. You will notice that just a couple of housekeeping items. You will notice that there is a chat feature available. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the presentation itself today, roughly 30 minutes or so, I'm guessing, something of that nature. And then if you have questions throughout the presentation, just chat those questions in. And then towards the end, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through and I'm going to read some of the questions off, and Dawn and I will go ahead and answer those. So we definitely want to make sure we take some time to answer the questions that you have. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. All right. Why is credit so important? A lot of people registered. A lot of people want to. It's a topic that a lot of people want to talk about, and certainly it's important for a lot of reasons. And this is why we have these I do credit presentations all the time, and it's a real popular topic. It's important for people getting a job, a particular job. I know in the financial services industry specifically, credit reports being pulled, that's a common practice, right? So, Dawn, if you're going to come into a role like this, right, you're given financial advice and talking to people about their finances, want to make sure that you have that a good background there, and the credit report kind of shows how you handle that, right? So there's a lot of jobs out there that do require a credit or good credit for a particular position, depending on what that is. Getting a loan when you need it. And I think this is particularly relevant in this past year, right? Financial flexibility is something that it goes a long way to your overall financial picture. Being able to get a loan when you need it, if there's a repair on a home or an automobile expense or whatever it is, just being able to get a loan when you need it, it's huge. So, having good credit gives you that financial flexibility to make those decisions. And then, can you talk about flexibility as well if you're wanting to rent an apartment or you're wanting to buy a home, just if you want to move somewhere, somewhere. I have friends that have been moving all over the country. It's been a weird year. So we have colleagues, right, been moving around. So having flexibility to be able to make those decisions, having good credit allows you just that ability to maybe rent that apartment or that home or refinance. I know a lot of people are trying to refinance right now, so I know I am. So having good credit just kind of gives you that flexibility to do so. But it's not just those things that we talk about in life and flexibility and stuff, but there's also a cost associated with this too in good credit. So for example, mortgages, obviously, that's been a big topic of this past year. Interest rates have gone down quite a bit. So I took some information, just kind of Googled and got interest rates and such. Just to give you an example of a $300,000 mortgage, 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Interest rates are obviously low right now, right? So we have two examples here. Two people, different credit scores. Diego has a 660 credit score. Angela has a 750 credit score. With the 660 credit score, Diego got a 3.88% interest rate, monthly payment of $1,412. So the total that he would pay for this 30-year mortgage would be over $500,000. So $508,165, for that $300,000 mortgage. That's how much he would be paying over the life. just by that credit score being 90 points better for Angela in that instance, that interest rate at 3.26 still sounds great, right? That those are both good interest rates. But her monthly payment is $100 lower. And then when you look at it, the total paid over 30 years, with my fancy laser pointer PowerPoint thing here, I like this. The total paid over 30 years, you look at it, she's going to be saving quite a bit of money over the life of this loan. You're talking about, $37,000 over the life of this loan she's going to be saving, which is huge, right? So having a good credit score can save you money in a lot of different ways. So that being said, we're doing, it's not just a lecture on what the credit report side. We're going to talk about some tips, right? And what we can do here to improve our credit. And we're breaking it down. How this presentation was designed, we wanted to break it down by these different categories. And this is what constitutes a traditional FICO credit score. Dawn, I've been talking way too much. I want you to take over.
Okay, I'll take over. Tag, my turn.
That's right.
So there's really 5 major categories that, when added together, give you your total of your overall credit score. So the largest part is payment history. Are you paying your bills on time? That's the biggest piece. Second largest part, though, of a credit score is your usage. Out of your limits, right, out of what you're available to use, how much are you actually using? And those 2 factors, if you think about it, account for 65% of your total score. So those are huge. And not a lot of people understand that, especially the usage part. Most people know, hey, I need to pay my bills on time. That's going to help my credit. But how much you use also holds a huge weight. The other aspects, about 15% is length of accounts. So how long have you had an account open? About 10% is the types of accounts. So do you have all credit cards or do you have all loans? And then last but not least, new credit or also inquiries, those types of aspects. That holds a small amount of weight, but yes, it does still, the more it adds up, the more it gets.
That's right. And I think the big thing to take away when you look at the breakdown there, obviously those first two categories, if somebody said to you, hey, in 5 seconds, tell me how to improve my credit score, pay your bills on time and keep your credit card debt low. That's 65% of your
All right,
credit
we're
score.
done. No.
We're done, right? 5 seconds. But yeah, those are important things to consider. And what we're going to do today and what we're doing is we're basically structuring these tips around these 5 categories, you'll see. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So the first tip today seems pretty obvious, but it's making your payments on time, right? It's not as obvious as it sounds, though, because there can be some misconceptions on terms of what paying your bills on time. What does that mean in terms of the credit report? Dawn, can you walk us through this? Making your payments on time. What do we need to do here?
Right. So when we talk about making your payments on time, creditors typically report to the bureaus once a month. So each month they want to say, are you current? Are you not? So when we talk about paying on time, they normally, if you're late at the point that they report it, which is usually 30 days late, that's when it's going to have a significantly negative impact on your score. And, your score can drop by almost 80 points or more with just that one late payment.
Yeah, and that's substantial. And that, again, that's a 35% portion of it. And that big drop from a credit reporting standpoint, you can think of a credit report like a report card in some ways. It really just kind of captures the information. Having a late payment of 30 days is a big deal, and it's a points to something wrong financially. Whether it is or not, whether it's just a mistake, that's kind of how it is reported as far as the credit report score. So a late payment constituting the biggest hit there as far as the credit score. So we want to keep those on time for sure.
Right.
Now,
and although it does initially although it does have an initial negative impact, the longer you get away from that late payment and the more you continue to be on time after that, the less it has an impact. But it's just that immediate impact is what holds the most weight.
Yep. It typically takes about 24 on-time payments to fully recover. It doesn't mean you won't recover up to that point, but to fully recover to where you were before, 24 months of on-time payments will get you back in there. Thank you for pointing that out. That's important. And I clicked ahead, so everybody close your eyes. Okay, here we go. So how do I improve my payment history? Now, what tips do you have, Dawn, that can help us make sure that we're paying our bills on time?
Yeah, so oftentimes we set reminders for ourselves to do something like, oh, we set an alarm clock to wake up in the morning, or we set an alarm for, oh, I need to make sure I pick up my child at school, or things like that. So a great way to help you make sure you're paying on time is to set yourself a reminder. But a really great way is to make sure that you're maintaining a monthly budget or a spending plan. So you know when things are due, making sure that you have a savings account so you can make sure that you're paying your bills on time is a huge piece to that. And then oftentimes what I find super helpful is just set up automatic payments from my banking institution to my creditor when it's due, so that way I don't have to worry about, is it going to be late?
Yeah, absolutely. Automation is huge there. It's kind of a set it and you don't want to forget it, but set it and it'll be paid, on a monthly basis. That payment's going out there. You made a great point about the budget, and I'm going to include following up today, and I should have said this earlier on. I'm going to be sending a recording, the copy of the recording today. I'm going to have a couple worksheets. One of the worksheets I'm going to have here is this budgeting worksheet. Um, it's really important to know what your cash flow situation is. Are you spending more money than you're making? Yeah, if you're in a situation where your expenses exceed your monthly income on a pretty regular basis, that's where something like this becomes an issue or it becomes a problem. Because if we're having to pay some things and having to pull money from other areas, that's where a late payment could pop up. So it's really important to make sure that spending plan's in place there. Great point, Doc. Thank you. Now, number two, this one is an area that, this is our utilization. This is 30%. It's basically how much credit are you using compared to your credit limits, right? Keeping your credit card balances low. I have found through my years looking at credit reports that this is an area where most people tend to struggle with. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Dawn.
I agree 110% on that. Most people, they think that they're doing great. They think that their credit should be phenomenal, but the biggest, one of that second largest parts to this is how much are you actually using. And the more you use, the closer you are to the limit, the more a creditor starts wondering, they may be going to be a little bit strapped financially. Are they going to be able to make payments?
Right. Yeah. Did I lose you there, Don?
I'm here.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
perfect. Yeah, your video is delayed, so it was kind of this way. Okay, I apologize. So, yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of how do we keep, so balance is low. You have somebody in that situation, you're talking to them, they're having difficulty. This is a particular area of focus. What things can they do to help them as far as keeping those balances down?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. Number one, knowing what your limit is. So just like with anything in life, we need to know where are we at. So knowing what your limit is extremely important. Of course, working on keeping your balance under 30% of that limit. So, good rule of thumb would be if your limit's 1,000, make sure that your balance is under 300 at all times. And that's going to help you. Make sure you have a plan to actually pay down your balances. And then ideally stop using the account that you're trying to pay down. Those are big, big pieces.
Yeah, and that's an area that often gets, that's where the challenge is this kind of using the account. So we have good intentions and we want to pay these things off, but we kind of find ourselves in a little bit of a cycle in some cases. So we pay a little bit extra on the card, but then we end up having to use the card, and it becomes kind of that. I know I personally have found myself in that situation before. So that being said, there are some things that, increasing your minimum payment can really go a long way if you have a plan. If that budget and spending plan is in place and when we have a plan to get that paid down, adding something to your minimum payment can help you. So this is an example of just how much of an impact adding, $50 to a minimum payment can have. In this example, this is a $2,500 credit card. We have an interest rate of about 18% there. You can see the minimum payment of $6,250. If we just paid that minimum payment, it would take us 17 years to pay this account off, and we would end up paying over $5,000 to do so. If I just add $50 to that minimum payment, now again, I'm not using this account anymore. So this is an account I'm not using. I'm just paying it down. Adding $50 cuts that almost 15 years off how long it's going to take to pay. And we end up saving over $2,500 as far as interest charges. So And again, that's where the budget comes into play here, and having it takes discipline for sure, but having a plan to get that paid down is super important. So just an example, but I think definitely a good one we can look at.
Another thing too, you can always take a look at your credit card statements, and usually on the right side of the credit card statement itself, it'll tell you, if you just make the minimum payment, here's how long it's going to take to pay off this account. If to pay it off in 3 years, here's how much you have to pay. So the creditors are kind of showing you too, listen, here's what you're looking at long term.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's, in that sense here, let's take a look. We'll play a little game. I'm going to give you a quiz here, Don. So I have two situations here. I have Diego has a balance of $800, a credit limit of $1,000. Diego's paying his entire balance, right? Angela has a balance of $5,000. She has a credit limit of $10,000 on that account. She's paying the minimum monthly payment. All right. So if you had to guess here, Dawn, who has the better credit score?
You're trying to trick me, but it's not going to work because I know the answer. Angela actually has the better credit score, although Diego's probably in a better place financially, but the credit score, which is what you asked me, would go to Angela.
Right. And it's because it's that utilization we're taking into account here, right?
Yep.
So we're assuming this is the only thing on their credit report, and this is what's reporting, similar age. So there's a lot of assumptions we're making, obviously. But if we're looking and we're factoring in utilization, Angela has a 50% utilization. Diego here is at 80% in utilization. The thing to consider, even though he's paying his entire balance, this data was reported to the credit bureau. So it's showing on the credit report a balance of $800. Now, that's an important thing to remember, because I know a lot of people use their credit cards for just their regular expenses, and that's okay. Certainly that's okay, but this should be a consideration, because if you're putting a large amount and then paying it off, when does that report to the credit bureau? When is your creditor reporting that information to the credit bureau? That could be impacting you here. In this case, it's impacting Diego. And remember, that's 30% of your credit utilization, or credit score. So something to factor in there. Don, you also made a really good point I want to point out here. Yes, Angela has the better credit score, but you mentioned Diego and financial health. You would say Diego's in more of a financially healthy position. Why is that? Why did you say that?
Well, because Diego's not overextending himself. He has the balance of $800, and he pays it off every month. So he's only putting on the card what he can pay off every month. So he's probably in a little bit more of a better financial situation, where Angela's kind of trying to maybe pay down a little bit as she can, but it's a little bit more difficult for her.
Right. And I feel like, in these situations too, if we're making the minimum payment and we're continuing to see that debt increase, there's probably a situation in our budget where our expenses are exceeding our income. So we're running what's called a deficit at that point. So that's something to consider as well. With Angela, I definitely would want to take a look at that budget and see if we can get that straightened out there. So good deal. I see some people chatted in some on that as well. So that's awesome. I appreciate your feedback. Keep the questions coming in too, because towards the end of the presentation, I'm going to be answering your questions. So if you have questions, put them in the chat and we will make sure we get those answered at the end there. Tip number 3, you may not want to close that account. I've had some questions come in already regarding this as well. So let's talk about this, because it's definitely something we consider here. This affects the length of credit history. So 15% of your credit score is the length of credit history. So Dawn, talk to us about this and maybe some tips here on trying to keep our length of credit history solid.
Sure. So of course we always have to build credit somewhere, right? Which typically means you have to open an account. So although that will initially take a little bit of a hit on the credit score because of it being new, the longer that you keep it open and you're showing you're using it wisely and you're paying it on time, the more it's going to help you work on improving your score. But although you have an account open doesn't mean that you have to use it to buy expensive things, right? You want to show, again, that you're using it wisely, paying it on time. So one way to maybe help with that is to put a subscription. So most of us pay for Netflix or Hulu or something that we already factor into our spending plan that we're going to pay every month. So even if you just put that on your card and you pay it every month, you're going to show that you're using credit wisely and that you're paying things on time. And then, sometimes do I need 10 credit cards open at once? Probably not. So if you're trying to decide, maybe I should close one or two, make sure that you're looking at what's going to have the least impact is if you close the account that has been open the shortest length of time.
Yeah, absolutely. So just what we want to do in these situations, you don't have to have, 5 cards of an age of X, Y, Z. It's really not that, but you just factor in all the accounts you have. What's the average age of these accounts? Obviously, if you open a new account, that will reduce the age of the overall a little bit. If you have an older account and you close it, it could reduce the overall. So this is one of those where you just want some age to the account. It doesn't mean you can't close. Just understand that there could be a small impact on your credit. Not a substantial one. Again, it's 15% of your credit score, but just have some good age to your account. I think that's probably, think of your credit report as a fine wine, right? Some age will definitely help there. Good deal. And I see questions coming in, so this is awesome. We're going to get to your questions as soon as we wrap up the presentation there. Perfect. Different types of accounts. This is the account differentiation, or having different types. So this is 10% of your credit score overall. It definitely factors in. And really with this particular aspect of your credit, it's recommended that you have a combination of what we call revolving accounts and what we call installment accounts. I'm going to have Dawn break this down for us here in just a moment. But what this does is it demonstrates an ability to responsibly handle your credit. That's really what it is. It's a way to say, you know how to handle revolving accounts and make those payments on time. You know how to handle these installment accounts and make those payments on time. So Dawn, tell us a little bit, like, what should we have? What should we do here? What should my credit report look like?
So, like you mentioned, Matt, there should be a little bit of a combination. When we talk about revolving credit, that means that you have the ability to use it, pay it, and keep using it. So that's what that revolving piece means. So a line of credit, credit cards, that's typically what we mean by revolving. Installment accounts are those where you open up the account, you have the same payment every month, and then you pay down your account. You can't reborrow from that. Those would be things such as maybe a student loan, a car loan. If you have a personal loan with your banking institution, those are examples of you borrowed X amount of money, you're making payments on it every month, and it's going to pay off within a specified time frame.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And that's when it comes to this, it's really, it's a tricky one to talk about, because I wouldn't recommend that somebody just starting out and building credit, you have to have an installment, and really just to get started. And when you're building credit, what's going to happen is life's going to happen over a period of time. And when you get out of, you're in high school, or you turn 18 and you're going to get a credit card or a credit builder credit card or something like that, and it's got a low limit, and you're going to use that. And then in college, you might get a car loan, or you have a student loan or something. So this isn't one that I necessarily feel like requires action per se. I think a lot of this happens to just be kind of life moving and things like that. If you have a 0 credit score and nothing on your credit report, and you're like, I want to start building, then yeah, if you're at that stage of life, you might want to think of adding both in some scenario. But a lot of times this is really just addressed over the course of life, and as your credit report evolves and ages and things like that, it typically gets addressed. So it's not an area where you're going to have a lot of focus, but again, it's helpful to have a little bit of both on there. Excellent. Now, this one, new credit. This is the one that I feel when I was a loan officer, this would come up all the time, because I was going to pull an application, or pull a loan application, start a loan up, and feel like, oh, I don't want to hurt my credit score. Is that going to hurt? How much is this going to hurt my credit score? So let's talk about this a little bit, Dawn. New credit, new loans and accounts.
Yeah, so anytime you want to, or you're asking somebody to extend credit to you, whether it's a loan, whether it's a credit card, that company is going to pull your credit report, and that's what's called a hard inquiry. And a hard inquiry will stay on your credit report for about 2 years. So it's not long-standing, but some red flags might pop up when you are asking 5 or 6 different people, 5 or 6 different credit card companies to open an account. For example, if you were to go to Target and they were to say, hey, Matt, would you like to open up a Target credit card? And you say, well, yeah, of course I do. Who doesn't want a Target credit card? What's going to happen is they're going to pull your credit. So that's an inquiry that's going to count towards your score. And then when you open the account, it's a new account. So those will initially have an impact. Or, for example, you want to be picky of what type of accounts you want to open. I know that I've told Matt this before, but I live in Michigan and my family lives in Florida. And one day, a person from American Express that was a Delta credit card said, hey, would you be interested in opening a Delta credit card? And my thought was, number one, what are the perks? Why would I even want to open this? Well, one of the big ones is you don't have to be charged for your luggage. So I was like, oh, all right. There's 3 people in my family, and that's typically $75 worth of luggage, and there and back is $150. So my thought was, all right, I could look at that. So yeah, that was a weighted cost to say, does it make sense for me to open that card? And so that's kind of where you want to weigh out those options.
Right, exactly. There's benefits sometimes, and sometimes there's not. And really what it is, again, it goes back to the kind of responsibility, right? Or just being responsible with it, right? So, if it's Christmas time or the holidays and you're out shopping and then you open up 5 or 10 cards, that could be the problem right there, right? That's why that is factored into your credit score. Because if you're taking on a bunch all at once, taking on a bunch of accounts, it could show that, there might be some financial issues there potentially. So again, that's just another thing to consider when it comes to that. As far as inquiries are concerned, Dawn, how long do those last, would you say? If you went and you got that Delta card, what do you think length of time, if you have an inquiry, how that would impact your score?
It'll stay on for about 2 years. And keep in mind, if you're looking for a car loan or a mortgage loan, it's understood that there's going to be at least a couple of inquiries in regards to that. So, that doesn't have nearly as much of an impact as if opening up 5 credit cards.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I've tracked this before in my past, and I saw a small dip, like 10 points or something like that, but it went back up, in the subsequent months. So it's not really something, again, it's something to consider and to think of, but at the same time, not something we necessarily have to stress over. So definitely some good things here. I had some questions come in on what tip was what, as far as the numbers are here. This is a summary. So if as far as the 5 tips that we have here, these are the areas. Again, this is just a recap of what we discussed. Pay your bills on time, keep those credit card balances low, make sure you close the right accounts. We talked a little bit about that. Consider the age of your credit profile overall. So if you're closing an older account, it could have an impact there. Have different types of accounts, again, that kind of mix, and then do not open too many accounts at once if you want to maintain or build that credit score there. So I want to talk really quick about some resources here as far as some next steps for everybody here. And I know, Dawn, you recommend this for people that you talk to, but if you want to pull your credit report, we recommend that you go to annualcreditreport.com. That's where you get your free credit report. You get one free credit report from each one of the bureaus per year. So that's your right to have that information. You can get it either through going through the website, or you can request it by mail, and that's the information there. Again, if you're feverishly writing down all this stuff down, I'm going to be sending the slide deck at the end of the presentation, so you have that information there. But again, I think that's a good practice to have, not only just for making sure that the credit report is accurate, because inaccuracies on a credit report can impact your credit score. So maybe that should be tip 6, rename the presentation. But make sure your credit report's accurate, make sure everything is up to date on that. So that's the place that you do that. The nice thing is you get to 3 of them, so you could stagger these throughout the year. I know identity theft is something that people talk about and have some concerns about. So maybe pulling your credit report once every 4 months or so is a good idea, just to make sure everything is up to date and accurate. And that's the website that you can do that. Do not type that into, just type that into your not the Google thing, but the thing on top, the URL there. And that way, because there are other sites that try to use that phrase to get you to go to their site. If anybody asks you for a debit card, you're on the wrong site. So this is the one you want to go to there. Now, the other thing is, as far as what we do, Dawn has these conversations with people all day. So,
Yeah.
Dawn, tell us a little bit about what you do and how, what you could help if somebody has questions about their credit report, wants to talk to somebody like you.
Yeah, so we here at GreenPath, we do several different things. We are we want that holistic picture. We want people to make sure that they're on the right path to being financially secure and have that financial wellness piece. So we do several different things. Number one, of course, we can do a credit report review. So you can give us a call. We would do a soft inquiry of your credit, so it's not going to count towards your score. But we can look at your report with you, talk about ways to maybe help you boost your score, help you get specifics as to what to do for you individually instead of just kind of a general overview. We can talk to you about what an overall budget would be for yourself. So that spending plan, which we mentioned was key in order to have that financial control. So we would talk a little bit about what you have coming in, what your expenses are going out, and maybe give you some advice or tips and tools to tweak some of that to get you to a more financially secure place. We offer housing counseling. So sometimes a mortgage company would require an individual to go through homebuyer education as a first-time homebuyer. We offer that service, as well as if you're struggling with your mortgage, we can help you communicate with your mortgage company. So we do a lot of different housing counseling. And we also offer a program called a debt management plan. So if you are struggling with your credit cards, and we talked a little bit about interest rate holds a big place of how much money goes towards paying down your debt, the debt management plan is where we work with creditors to lock in an interest rate and payment to help you pay things off in a more reasonable time frame. So those are a few of the different services that we do. And what's interesting is sometimes all of those different bullet points are in one conversation. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and if you have questions or something, you want to talk to somebody like Dawn about your credit report and get some tips, like some personalized tips, it's great. You can talk to Dawn about that, and there's no cost for that service. So please reach out to us. There's contact information there. Our phone number is at the bottom if you would like to talk to somebody about your credit. But that wraps kind of the presentation portion of today. I want to thank you for joining. I see a lot of questions were typed in, so we're going to address that here once I stop the recording. So thank you all, and we're going to get to the question portion here. One moment.